Welcome to Downloaded, the show where we gather the most opinionated voices in tech and focus their enthusiasm on the biggest stories of the week. I'm your host, Patrick Norton, filling in for Jim Lauterbach, who's down rubbing elbows with a YouTube glitterati at VidCon. Joining me today, Josh Lowensohn from CNET, Adi Kamdar from the Electronic Frontier Foundation. And gentlemen, welcome to the show. I want to apologize for yet another boring week of news in the summer of 2013.
Too bad.
Oh my goodness. So we've got the first real Google phone from Motorola, NSA search secrets from Snowden, the National Security Agency Director General Keith Alexander getting heckled and outright mocked. In kind of a brutal fashion, I understand, at Black Hat. DEF CON going down with some of the most amazing hacks we've ever seen. An impending ban on older iPhone sales. Apple getting drop-kicked by the Patent Office and told to share and play nice by the Department of Justice. I don't even know where to start. Josh, do you think President Obama will reach down from the heavens and pardon Apple and keep the iPhones flowing next week?
I don't think it's going to happen, and almost nobody I've talked to says it's going to happen. There hasn't been any sort of presidential intervention since 1987, and the last time it was actually involving Samsung too, which is kind of funny. But he stands to be in a lot of trouble if he does anything. He's basically going to piss off a lot of international companies who might see it as favoritism.
You think?
Yes.
I mean, it's funny. I also love the fact that the Patent Office this week was like, no, pinch and zoom. There's like prior art. There's prior effort. It's a rough week for Apple because, of course, well, we'll talk about Apple and the DOJ later. Adi, trollingeffects.org, EFF's new site. What's going on there?
Yeah, so this is a new site we just launched on, 2 days ago, Wednesday. It's basically a site to collect demand letters. So we have a big patent troll problem, not just in this country, all around.
Right.
And patent trolls are sending people demand letters that basically are, shakedown notices. They're like,
let me put this in context.
Yeah.
I, from Dewey, Scroom, and Howe, am sending you, small online retailer, I have, patents that make your store a violation of my patents, and I want 10% of your revenue, or a flat payment of $50,000,
Exactly.
or a flat payment of $10,000.
Exactly, and a lot of times these flat payments are far less than what litigation would cost, which runs in the millions of dollars. So startups and individuals are basically forced to pay up, or ignore it, or go to court. And we're trying to collect this information because, after a lawsuit happens or after a settlement happens, everybody's gagged, so nobody can talk about this. So we're trying to collect it before any of that happens, and you can actually figure out what the patent troll landscape is.
And it's amazing because there's an entire business model, probably the most famous one involving a small company in Utah that decided to corner the entire open source operating system market, failing miserably in the process because they picked a fight with IBM, who had more money and more lawyers and a lot more time. But this is, it's crazy because there's an entire business model where people are gathering patents, looking for ones that are even the most frivolously related, and say turning those into $23 million licenses from, say, Sony for JPEG usage or something. It's crazy. Is this a problem that's growing? Because you would think that it was kind of finally, settling down.
It's a problem that's growing, and the projection for this year is over 65,000 new software patents will be granted, and these are like the real source of the problem. Is that we get these patents that are very broad, that are obscenely broad,
right?
That are like. They're basically talking about a method of doing something, or a generic way of a generic function.
An electronic means of transferring cash in exchange for goods involving a computer chip.
Exactly.
And suddenly somebody's like, well, you owe me all the money for the ATMs, you owe all the money, Amazon owes me money, and everyone owes me money because I had this idea that probably wasn't even legitimate.
Yeah. In the midst of all this Apple, Samsung stuff, you find out that your smartphone is covered by over, a couple 100,000 patents, and you're like, someone's probably infringing something, I guess.
Well, and we'll talk about Motorola in a second, but the great irony there being is that Microsoft actually makes more money off of Android than Google does because Microsoft collects gigantic checks in exchange for licensing rights to patents that are directly, I can't say infringed, but are employed in the Android operating system. Android, I like that, the Android operating system. Man, should we talk about the DOJ and Apple?
Yes.
Breaking this morning. Well, do you want to talk about? You open it up.
Sure. So they basically, the crack of dawn, DOJ put out a letter basically saying, here is what we think Apple needs to do post-trial. So some of those things included putting a staffer that Apple has to pay for to make sure that all their stuff is like A-OK with antitrust compliance.
Right.
They also need to let other companies like Amazon or Barnes & Noble be able to sell their stuff within their apps, including price tags, which they can't do right now. So those are two of the big changes.
Did the DOJ statement suggest that say Barnes & Noble or Amazon would be subject to the 30% rake that Apple gets from everything else that's sold through iOS?
No, I think that was explicitly not part of it. Also, yeah, I mean, it's really crazy when you think about it, because if you expect to come into a store and see books, you expect to be able to see a price tag, just like you would in a normal store, as well as a way to purchase it. But the way it is now, you can't even put a link to that product in the app, which is, it's nuts.
I mean, where do we even start with this? I mean, Apple will tell you that they're creating a seamless experience for the end user that affords a blah, 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 we can do no wrong. I mean, I'm also laughing, like, they released it how early this morning? Did they try to do it before Holder woke up? I mean, this almost sounds like it's actually maybe favoring on the side of consumers and the general public, which in my mind has not been sort of a hallmark of Holder's Department of Justice.
Yeah, I think a lot of it stems back to Apple's argument, which was that, you know what, before this came, the price was getting so low, it was $10, it was going to get even lower.
Right.
And if you're an author, that's just not going to work in the long term. Like, people are going to expect those prices to either stay or keep going down, whereas the price of making content is maybe getting higher.
This being the same Apple that raised the prices eventually on music after being half beaten to death by all of the recording companies on the planet. The only time I think I've ever been on the side of any recording company in the last 20 years of my life. I mean, any thoughts here from the EFF, or are you just kind of watching this going like, yeah, they got what they deserved?
I mean, I think we're watching this kind of loosely because we're swamped with everything else. Yeah, like we said,
the
very
NSA
light week.
and the gathering of everybody's information and the patent trolling and the lack of privacy and
you know, we've seen the government really just kind of step in and kind of put their hands in tech a little more, especially over the last year. And I mean, it'll be interesting to see what comes of it, what is good. Because for the most part, at least in our experience, it's not been good.
Right.
It's been, you know, hindering innovation, hindering whatever. But now we're seeing the government pay more attention to things like patent trolls or things like larger issues around the patent system or around antitrust or consumer protection. And, you know, some of that's kind of exciting.
I'm still just enthralled with the idea that the patent office finally got to a major patent that seemed ridiculous and actually said, this is ridiculous, and shot down the pinch and zoom patent for Apple.
Yeah.
Was that late last week or early this week? It's all kind of bleeding together at this point. I mean, is this a sign that maybe finally, you know, Washington, D.C. is maybe letting go of a little of its terminal love thing with Silicon Valley? Because there's always been like, Microsoft and Google and Apple are just wonderful, and the donations keep coming in. So it's kind of peculiar, actually.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think on one hand you get, I mean, the patent office now has to pay a lot more attention to their issues, to their own issues, because you know, Obama has come down and said, you guys need to fix a lot of things.
We won't give you
them out.
And well, it's funny because they've given them more, like, not more examiners, but more research assistants to the examiners in an effort to speed up the process. But the sheer volume of patents, I mean, you know, without major efforts, can they ever catch up? And should we even unpack the argument that software patents are ridiculous and should be ended? I see heads nodding. I see you looking like, I don't know if I can speak about this right now.
I mean, like I said, it's a crazy issue. It's an absurd issue, and there's definitely a lot of aspects that need to be fixed. Everything from how patents are issued, what patents are issued, to how the litigation process works. And you know, we've seen over the last couple months, Congress has introduced 7 bills now, I think, to try to fix the patent system in some way or another. People want this to be fixed.
Have any of them passed?
None of them have passed. None of them. Well, they you know, they're being introduced right now. Has anything passed recently? I
don't
actually
think
know. So, well, you know, there is momentum in some sense. We just need to get everybody in the tech community like riled up. We need to get consumers paying attention because this does affect them. It's not just in the weeds issues. They're the ones that are being targeted by a lot of patent trolls these days, and we need to like get you know, this movement actually going.
Is there any? I mean, is there any kind of real consensus among the major players in tech? Are they all? I mean, because you look at it, it's like you see the companies that are normally completely at each other's throats are, cross-licensing. They're in consortiums. They're paying each other money. It's kind of ironic that the one place, except for of course Apple and Samsung, is the sort of shining example of how this goes sideways. Everybody's managed to play nice at some level, except for the patent trolls that are basically just trying to rip a vig off of everybody they can rip a vig off of, to use a Jersey term. And I can't say extortion, because the last time I said extortion involving a patent troll, I nearly ended up in court, and I don't really want to talk about that right now.
You can't.
No, I can.
Even Obama used that word, so.
He's got more lawyers
more.
than I do. And the Secret Service and the Marines. I think he's less worried about it. His house is not his. He can't lose his house. But bringing it back, though, I mean, is there even any real consensus in Silicon Valley or in technology? Because it seems like people are still pretty enthusiastic about holding patents and defending patents because they make a lot of money off of core technology that's protected by patents.
Yeah. I don't know if there's consensus on anything in Silicon Valley, let alone patents. I think what we've seen is a lot more big players are speaking out about patent issues or are willing to try out new patent schemes. So, while we have Google patenting things left and right, they also unveiled that they are trying out 4 different licensing schemes to try and make them, commit patents to being defensive or to commit patents to other people. Twitter has this thing called the Innovator's Patent Agreement, which is basically like, you as the innovator, you as the creator of this patent have ultimate say in how we use this patent, and we're not going to use it offensively unless we absolutely need to,
or
really,
become
with your permission.
Go through an IPO and become a publicly held company, and then suddenly find you have fiduciary responsibility to shareholders, and many of your shareholders are going to say, start suing everyone. It's a source of revenue.
Yeah, well, hopefully not.
That's why no company should be publicly held. I kid. Moto X. This is so bizarre. The phone we've been waiting for like 2 years, week and a half, 2 weeks ago, Google's like, yeah, page 47, subparagraph S, we laid off half of Motorola. And like 2 weeks later, I mean, literally like 5,000 people, like literally almost, I think more than half of the current employees, they revealed the Moto X, which is going to be, oddly enough, made in Fort Worth, Texas in the US, is going to be available in custom flavors for AT&T purchasers. Obviously, the Chromecast comes at the tail end of last week. Obviously, the great recovery from the Google TV debacle. It's bad when you have a product that hurts yourself, but when it nearly takes one of your primary partners out of business, you can pretty much guarantee the Google TV name will never come back. But it's fascinating because it's like they're trying to move beyond voice control, beyond touching the phone, and actually did some pretty radical engineering in terms of not having the Snapdragon do all of it, but a contextual computing and a speech-to-voice synthesizer. Wait, let me read it. Natural language processing chip, which they don't even have a name for at this point. I mean, and they probably don't want to talk about, period, given how far ahead this puts them. Obviously too early. Nobody's tested one in the field in any meaningful way. Is this the first real Google phone?
I think it's the first Google phone as a business. If you look at any sort of history with the Nexus products, that hasn't become this big mainstream thing. I mean, the closest thing we have to that is them taking a phone that's already popular, like the HTC One or Galaxy S4, and making the prime Google version, so anybody can buy it. I think the exciting thing here is that it's really the idea of the business, the idea of customization. It's something that no one else is doing. It basically almost calls back to like the Nike ID, or like when you buy a Dell computer, you can pick out like the bezel. There's something so unusual about that in this day and age where you only have like 1 or 2 products.
Well, I mean, it's funny. It's like a 4.7-inch Gorilla Glass screen, and mostly the customization is almost entirely the back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're feeling excitement here, or is it just?
I'm more excited by the idea of it than the actual product. To me, it's a mid-range phone that still kind of costs as much as a high-end phone. It's they're using this screen technology that's maybe not as nice as what you find on some other phones. I mean, there's certain things to pick at. It's not like this is the best of breed phone. Like, there's still some shortcomings, but the whole idea that they could do this with something else is very exciting, and the kind of stuff they've done with the software, it's very cool. It kind of hails back to, I think, when the first Moto Razr Max came out. It's like you could do all this crazy stuff, like launch an app when you plug in the headphones. Like, no one else was doing that, and it's kind of one of the strengths of the platform. They're playing it up.
Do you think? I mean, do you think this is going to extend into other Google products like Chromecast? Obviously, most of this is in glass, and you could argue that a lot of this has already been in place on previous Motorola phones, but. Or is it just a natural progression? Get over it.
I think it works with smartphones because something like this, you already have the parts. It's pretty much the same. I don't know if you could do this with a laptop. I don't know if I want to do this with a laptop. Like maybe some people want pink keys on their keyboard,
right.
But you know, like that's
it's
not
funny
a newer exciting idea.
I keep thinking about like, you know, transformational experiences with the interface. And you're like, dude, I can get a pink back on it.
That's what they're selling, though. I mean,
Yeah.
if you look at the ads, it's all about how to make this fit your life. It's like it's this very basic idea that, again, Dell was pushing like 20 years ago.
But aren't people just gonna buy one and then immediately
And then
put it
put a case
inside of
on
a
it?
case?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the funny thing we were joking about in the office. It's like, well, there's 2 colors of iPhone, but you know what? There's 10,000 cases. Like,
Yeah, that's true.
Oh my
So the
goodness.
customization you get on the back of the buttons, it's really kind of moot.
We already can change our screen, people. Oh my goodness. Well, guys, want to talk about some privacy stories this week?
Yeah.
The feds ask internet companies to turn over user account passwords. Basically, the U.S. government, primarily the NSA, has been demanding that major internet companies share users' stored passwords, and more importantly, the salt. Basically, the hashtags and the salt being the little bits and pieces that are mixed in with the password to make it more difficult to crack. According to 2 industry sources familiar with these orders, which represent an escalation in surveillance techniques that has not previously been disclosed. And then, of course, the latest Snowden revelation at the UK Guardian, XKeyscore. Adi, you want to talk about this one?
Yeah.
I'll just start cursing like an angry sailor.
Please don't, please. Yeah, it's funny how I was mentioning this earlier. Every week we're like, this is the busiest week we've ever had, and then every week there's something brand new and absurd for us to be like, wow. And it was actually interesting watching the reactions either around the office or around Twitter or whatever when the XKeyscore came out just once, because everybody was like, wow, like.
Right. I mean, because
we've grown a little numb to this.
If you haven't been paying attention, essentially the NSA is like, no individual can possibly search the vast databases of information we have archived. No. And then Snowden's like, XKeyscore. And it's basically, if you're willing to lie in a form, you can browse pretty much, you can have searched for pretty much anything you want on any individual you can identify.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the oversimplification.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think and one of the big issues is the way they're responding to this is, yes, this exists, but there are safeguards in place, and you know, people need to go through whatever hoops to search for this data, or to search through our giant databases, and you know, they're shifting the discussion away from, holy crap, we're collecting all this information, right, to, oh, we have all this information, but we can only use it, you know, in certain regards. And that's the part that always gets expanded when it comes to these sorts of programs. You know, once you're collecting everything, it's hard to expand that to you know, even more things, right, especially when we get these new revelations that it's moving from just metadata to content to, you know, whatever else.
I mean, it's funny, to the credit, most of the stories I've seen that involve, like, Microsoft's like, no, we don't turn over passwords. They may ask, and we may not be able to tell you who asked because of gag orders on the asking, but they fundamentally refuse. I mean, it's a little, you know, I mean, Mom always said, it doesn't hurt to ask, right? But it's a little frightening to be like, you know, we have all your information. We have more computing power than anything else in the planet or anyone else or any other country or probably any other several countries. We will eventually be able to crack everything with advances in computing and cracking technology. We'd just like to accelerate the process.
Yeah.
I mean, is there any way to fight this? I mean, since Congress can't seem to do anything, or do we just keep hounding our Congress critters?
So I think that's one of the big things. I think, so we saw last week with the Amash Amendment that almost passed. That was basically, it was a funding amendment around the NSA.
They're going to
programs.
defund the NSA.
That is the tagline. Yeah. They were going to basically shift the funding so that the NSA had to be a little more explicit about how their surveillance program worked. They had to target people who are actually involved with these cases or with these issues. It almost passed.
Right.
205 to 217, something like that.
Which is kind of a big deal for this Congress.
Which
something
is
that almost
huge,
passed.
Which is huge. And it's, I remember we were sitting watching the hearing, like, as the votes came in, and we were so excited that it even got that close. And I think that shows that Congress is, a lot of people are getting involved and a lot of people are angry. We even had people who voted yes or who voted against that amendment, turn around afterwards and either tell President Obama that they're still not satisfied with this. They didn't think the amendment was the right way to do it, but they still want the 215 program to be fixed. I think there are enough people shouting about this, and there are enough people. We had a hearing yesterday about this where Leahy, or maybe it was a couple days ago, where Leahy was like, I've seen the information that you've given me, and I still don't trust this program. I still don't believe you guys. And as soon as people start realizing that at some point there's this disconnect where someone's either misinforming someone or the oversight that they claim is happening with Congress getting involved isn't actually there.
Well, Congress almost kind of got to sort of pick Roberts as the head of the FISA court, who got to pick all the other justices, and he is ostensibly our oversight.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think there could be, and it's funny, it's like, look, I don't want signals intelligence to end. I don't want the NSA defunded. I think the NSA does a lot of really valuable things for national security, but the flip side is, at some point you got to be like, no, this is too much.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's noise in Congress. They almost got something done. We should all stop calling our Congress critters.
No. I mean, keep calling. There are a bunch of movements out there, especially stopwatching.us, stopwatching.us. Is a big campaign to get people on board, to get Congress into this. It'll let you contact your congressman very easily. We've had a lot of protests in person. The whole Restore the Fourth movement was a big success on 4th of July. They had a big protest out here in San Francisco. They're having another one this Sunday, 1984 Day, they're calling it. I may show up. There is energy, and there is a movement, and all it takes is translating that to action, translating that to a sort of language, a sort of narrative that most other people can understand.
I think there's always ways to make the controls better. I think what's making it difficult is that you have companies like Facebook and Google that are offering these they're almost like life-changing services that are really relying on deeper sets of information. I mean, especially Facebook. Like, every year or two, it just kind of gets deeper and deeper and deeper.
Facebook creeps me out, and I have a very distant relationship to Facebook.
Totally. But I mean, they're really trying to package up the idea that if you give us access to this or that, or certain levels of things, we can do this much more to make your life better, whether it's like catching up with old friends, keeping up with events, maybe finding out things that you might like and making it more relevant. I mean,
monetizing
Google made billions and built a huge company off that. I mean, I think as long as they keep doing that, and it seems like it's accelerating, I don't think it's going to change.
I mean, Google, you could always say that Google's primary business is built on data hoarding.
Absolutely.
And squirreling it away. I mean, that's kind of the reason like Google and Apple got into a fight over Google Maps, is Apple wanting deeper data to monetize and move forward. Do you think consumers understand that at a deep level? That
Definitely
they're just
not.
giving away lots and lots of information?
Absolutely not.
I mean, you guys have talked about this in the past, the idea that you're going to buy a cheeseburger and your health insurance rates are going to go up. Yeah. That's like the ultimate sort of like, once we have everybody tied to a single mode of digital currency that's tracked in real time, everything's going to be simpler.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen over the last few years more and more relationships between big companies and data brokers, which are these crazy middlemen that basically collect a lot of information. They claim to have profiles of every single household in the U.S., if not, beyond the U.S.
It may not be a very good profile, but I'm sure they have one for.
But they have one, yeah, exactly. And this is collecting information not just of where you browse, what websites you go to, what you shop for online, but every time you swipe your rewards card at the grocery store, or every time you use your credit card at X, Y, or Z. Really, they collect this information about you, and they're able to tailor ads towards you, or to sell it to whatever third parties, or, as we've seen in the past, actually work with the government if they want to subpoena that information and find out information about whoever. And all of a sudden we have these huge companies that nobody really knows about, that have a lot of information about us. And we don't really have a meaningful level of control over that information. We don't know what they have about us.
You probably don't have any level of control over that information.
Some of them have opt-outs where that require you to give them more information in order to opt out. Some of them have opt-outs that don't actually opt you out. They just say, okay, we're going to stop using your information, but we're going to stop showing you ads, but we still have your information. We'll still use it for our data sets. The FTC just announced last month that they're going to start looking into this and hopefully start cracking down on this. The question about privacy is yes, a lot of people are giving over a lot of data. More and more people are giving over data in ways that they don't even know about.
Sure.
So the discussion, I think, needs to shift from how much data am I giving over to how much transparency is there around whoever has my data and how much control do I have. I think a huge part of privacy is control.
Sure.
And we need to give consumers and give users the ability to know what's out there about them and the ability to say, yeah, having tailored ads is awesome. Go for it. Take my data. Or, heck no.
Right.
I'm going to press the opt-out button.
It's been funny. A friend of mine was doing some research into credit scores recently, and what they found out that kind of blew their mind and horrified them and make them just got fundamentally upset at their core is there's not really a standard credit score. There are companies that develop different flavors and formulas of credit scores that may differ by bank, by department inside of bank, by as different sort of loan types. And he's like, I may have like 70 different credit scores, and like 65 of them are privately owned, or there's one for this bank and one for that bank and one for the other bank. And how do I know what my real credit score is? It's like, you don't. Digital media is set to overtake TV viewing. Quote, Americans will watch more online and mobile media than television this year for the first time, says research firm eMarketer. I'm not sure I buy into this, but I'll ask you guys, how long before primetime and sweeps weeks and cable itself, I can hear the email flooding into my inbox from Maryland at this point, are just rendered moot? I know the answer to this, but I'd like to hear what you guys think.
I want to say there's a direct correlation with how much YouTube videos people are watching at work. Because maybe that's, maybe they'll watch like an hour cumulatively every day,
right, which
compared to the average of what they do at home is different. I think a lot of it has to do on cord cutting. I just don't think a lot of people are there yet.
Yeah. That's what's funny is it's very, I was laughing because a couple years ago somebody was telling me how no one watched DVDs anymore, and Blu-ray was stillborn, and that Netflix had taken over, and I'm like, dude, 50% of America is less than a megabit down. DVDs are in more DVD players are in more homes than HD TVs or internet connectivity. DVD is far from dead, which led to an extended argument. Then we got actual numbers from Netflix that explain sort of the ratio of DVD rentals to streams. But yeah, cord cutting I think is very, in technology is everybody's cord cutting, and the reality is there's very modest shifts. There's billions of dollars being made in cable, and very, very modest shifts, if any, that are rationalized over time of people actually leaving cable. Probably almost entirely for ESPN and Game of Thrones.
It's certainly easier than it was 3 years ago. There's no doubt about that. I know we ran a series, I think in 2010, with David Katzmeyer, who's our TV guy, and he was just awesome, but he just couldn't do it. Like, if there's anybody who could do it, it was him. Like, he's totally tech savvy, he knew what to do, and just totally out of luck.
I don't think I've had satellite or cable in 4 or 5 years at this point. But it was funny. Like I don't care about sports ball, and I don't watch ESPN. And all of a sudden I had like an extra 8 hours a week because I wasn't getting sucked in when my wife was getting sucked into the Real Housewives of some horrible place in North America. Are you guys cable watchers? Do you guys have cable or satellite? Or are you guys cord cutters, or just no screen time period?
I mean, so we just moved a year ago, and decided not to get cable. We have a TV, we watch Netflix, or we watch whatever's on through whatever free channels actually. And I don't know, none of us are, like I said, or like you said, none of us are big sports fans, so it's like, I think that's the thing.
Yeah, I'm a couch potato, unfortunately, so I'm probably
there's
the
nothing
opposite
wrong
end of the
with being a
spectrum.
couch
Yeah, no,
potato.
nothing at
Like
all.
this feels very natural to me right now.
For me, it was like looking at like what I was watching versus like $180 a month for satellite, and I was
it's
like,
ridiculous.
What am I, insane?
Yeah, no, and I've done that cost-benefit analysis, but I think the thing that always gets me is this idea that you could just kind of switch between channels of pretty much anything infinitely and record whatever you want. I don't think anything on demand has really gone to that point from Apple, from Roku, from anybody.
Right.
And there's always that guilty feeling when you're watching that stuff. Like, is this using up my bandwidth? Is it going to slow down?
Fortunately, I mean, Comcast isn't counting it as well.
Yeah,
as
they've
they
gotten
might
much
at
better.
This point. They've sort of backed away from that. But it's also funny. Its rights availability is so fascinating. Like, can I stream it? One of my favorite sites is like, you type in the title of a television show or a movie, and it's like, and I'm buying the Blu-ray, or oh, it's available in VHS. Because there's a staggering amount of content that isn't available on Netflix, and isn't available on Apple TV, and isn't available on Amazon Prime, and isn't available on Google Play or Crackle or one of the 32 other services, which is also part of the problem. Is there's a plethora of places that some of which have some of the content you want, none of them have all of the content you want.
Yeah.
And then there's HBO, who's like, never for less than $1 million a month.
Yeah.
Today, UPS announced its plan to bring 3D printing services to the masses. The shipping company will soon roll out Stratus's UPrint SE Plus printers to 60 locations in San Diego to test out the new service. It'll be aimed at small businesses, startups, and retail customers in need of a professional-grade model to produce things like prototypes and artistic renderings. Part of me is like, what? FedEx couldn't do it first? Way to go, UPS! Big brown van with the win. Have either of you had a chance to experiment with 3D printing?
I've seen it happen. I've never done it.
Yeah, I've only done it once.
I'm excited to hear about I can guarantee you that the most traumatized person at UPS is going to be the person that's in charge of the 3D printing station. Just because people are going to come in and they're going to render a model, and there's going to be something wrong with the model or their slice of the model, and then they're going to have to do it again. I'm actually fascinated. I think this is a profoundly gutsy move.
Yeah.
I also think it's going to be profoundly traumatic for the people in the retail outlets at UPS.
Is there anything else like this out there? I mean, like, are there other shops or
Tech shop?
Yeah, I guess tech shop.
I mean, if you go to Maker Fair, there's like, the 100,000 garages, and the idea that they're putting shop bots, and if you're willing to do some searching and some traveling, you can find people to print stuff out.
Sure,
and there's sort of service bureau type agencies where you can go to them and take their model to print them. But the idea of a fairly common retail operation, like 60, I mean, that's a significant investment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's a lot of people in San Diego, but that's a lot of 3D printers to suddenly drop into a relatively small metro area, or at least small in terms of distance, not time. It can take a long time to drive across San Diego.
So are we in a near future where we're going to walk by a UPS store and there's going to be like one of those like 10-cent copy signs, but it's going to be like a 3D building?
I think it's a little farther out, but it's, I mean, to date myself, I can remember when laser printers at FedEx shops, which were Kinko's shops back then, were exotic. And at least one Kinko's shop near, oh my goodness, the Teachers College, Columbia, place I apparently spent a year of my life and don't remember much of, but like literally like that FedEx saved my life. Like that FedEx got me through at least 3 classes because I couldn't afford a printer, and that was the only place I could actually get to between where I was commuting from and the campus.
Do you think it's too early for this to be rolling out? Everything about 3D printing blows my mind. I think it's the coolest thing ever, but I don't know what the state of it is right now. All I've seen are really kind of crappy models of my head that a friend printed out, and I'm like, could be me.
Well, it could be you. Well, it's kind of like the resolution is finally getting high enough. A lot of it's the skill of the model maker and the tweaking of the model. And then there's a whole layer of abstraction where you take this thing called an STL file, and it gets sliced into layers that can be printed out by your printer. And that's at least for Michael and I, the guy, we've been working a lot on this. That's where all hell kind of breaks loose, is translating the ethereal model into the physical thing, which is probably the big problem with any product. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Before we go, I wanted to mention the TechFeed channel is closing in on 100,000 subscribers. To celebrate, we're having a 100K subscriber contest. We're giving away some great prizes as we get more subscribers. At 97,500 subscribers, we're going to give away 12 iTunes gift cards, each one a $25 value. And at 100,000 subscribers, one lucky viewer will receive an iPad mini. To enter is so easy. Just share any episode of TechFeed on Twitter or Facebook using #TechFeedMe. That hashtag is #TechFeedMe, and share any episode of TechFeed on Twitter or Facebook. Contestants must be 18 years or older, legal U.S. residents. Don't send me angry emails if you live outside the U.S. because I can't fix that. And check out the TechFeed Facebook page or the show notes below for more information. That's it for this episode, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank Josh Lowensohn and Adi Kamdar for joining me today. And if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please post them below in the YouTube comments section. Until next time, you've been watching Downloaded.